Hello, everybody. I am going to take you through a lesson on the night sky. Now, typically, I would come to your school and we would have a giant inflatable dome and we would all climb inside and we would be able to look up and see what the sky looks like both during the day and at night. But we all know this year's a little different, so I'm going to try to take us through this lesson using the software, and so it'll look a little bit different, but hopefully it is still kind of neat. Okay, so if you look at this picture, we can look up at the night sky and we can see a lot of different things in the sky. And we've been studying the solar system, so we know that we can see stars and planets and moons. Well, really, we just see the one moon, and we can sometimes see shooting stars. And of course, we can see our sun during the daytime. Okay, so long before there were video games, before there was television, or even books, people used to spend many hours outside at night looking up at the sky. They would use the brighter stars as guides, and then they would imagine pictures of great heroes, wild beasts, and beautiful princesses. Often they made up stories to go along with the pictures, and over the years, these stories were repeated from parents to their children. Today, we call these stories myths, and they go hand in hand with the constellations that we see in the night sky. So, what is a constellation? A constellation is a group of stars that makes a picture in the sky. While many of the constellations started out as simple pictures made from stars, today these patterns in the sky have taken on a new meaning. The main use of the constellations by modern astronomers is for locating objects in space. Today, the entire sky has been divided into 88 official constellations, and each constellation has its own boundary and none of them overlap. So, let me show you what I mean. You can think of a modern constellation in the sky the same way as a country on a map. Let's say you want to locate a particular place, like Mount Fuji. First, you would begin by looking up what country it's in, and after you found that it was located in Japan, then you would find a world map, find Japan, and go from there. It works the same way with constellations. If an astronomer wanted to look at the Andromeda galaxy with his or her telescope, they would start by looking it up in a star atlas. Then they would look at the night sky within the boundaries of the constellation Andromeda and use the map in the atlas to find it. All right, so we're going to click here to find the Andromeda galaxy. Long before they became addresses in space, constellations captured the imaginations of countless generations of people. The myths and legends that grew around them not only entertained people, but they helped people remember important events in their own lives. Adults use these stories to teach their children about right and wrong, and even today, many of these stories show up in books, on television, and in movies. So, can anyone think of any classic Greek myths that have become movies? Let's take a trip back in time to the days of ancient Greece and look at some of the more famous constellations and the stories that they tell. Here we are looking at a typical winter sky in the northern hemisphere. As you look around, you can see many different stars. Some are brighter, some are colorful. The origins of modern constellations probably started with a scene just like this. How many of us have ever played the game Connect the Dots? This is when you have a sheet of paper with a lot of dots on it and you follow the numbers with a pencil until you make a picture. Well, back in ancient times, people didn't use paper and pencils, they used stars. Concentrating on the brightest stars first, they created images that remind them of things in their lives. So let's connect the dots and see what we get. Here we have some of the simple shapes created from the stars. So, do these shapes remind you of anything? Okay, so let's look over here. Let's look in this general direction. That's a very popular constellation. Do you know what it is? What about this guy right here? The head and the squiggles. Look closely and see if these remind you of anything. As you can see, by simply connecting the dots, we get images that are very open to interpretation. This is what happened in the past, too. Different people saw different things. Some of the images did stand out really well. However, those became the ones that many of the ancient Greek myths were based on. The people of ancient Greece actually identified 43 different constellations, and using some creativity, they came up with pictures that look like this. So watch what these actually look like in their minds when they use their imagination. As you probably guessed, those people in ancient Greece had some pretty active imaginations. While some of the constellations actually look like the objects they are supposed to represent, some of the constellations are honorary constellations. What this means is that they were named for things that people were looking to honor or remember, and they didn't necessarily look like what they were named for. A good example is the constellation Aries the Ram. So let's look and see if we can find Aries the ram. Here we have a pretty picture of a ram complete with horns and a fluffy tail. Right here. Let's look at what the actual stars of Aries looks like. Does anyone see a ram now? No. The truth is, Aries only has 2 bright stars in it, so there's really no way to draw it to look like a sheep. But to the ancient Greeks, Aries was an important symbol, so rather than have an empty place in space, they put the symbol up as a constellation. There are quite a few constellations that do look similar to the objects they're supposed to represent, however, and these are fairly easy to spot once you get the hang of it. Naturally, we don't have time to go over every constellation and myth, so we're just going to pick out a few standouts. Let's start with Orion the Hunter. Do you see Orion? He's not far from Aries. The trick is to look for the 3 stars in a row. These make up Orion's belt. Right in here. Orion is one of the easiest constellations to spot in the winter sky. Not only does he have a few stars that are standouts, but he actually looks a little like what he's supposed to be, a big guy in the sky. The first thing that you will probably notice about Orion is his belt, the 3 stars in a row. These make a straight line right across his midsection. Then we have a bright red star on his shoulder. This is the star Betelgeuse. It's a red supergiant star. And so while it sounds like the name of a movie ghost, Betelgeuse is actually an old Arabic word that means armpit. Can you guess why they call it that? Because that's where his armpit is. If you move down to the corner of the constellation, diagonally opposite Betelgeuse, you come to Rigel, a blue star whose name means foot. So right down here. Finally, if you look at Orion's right hand, you can see several stars in a row that make up his club, and in the left hand, there's a curved line of stars that make up his shield. If you really concentrate, you should be able to get the full picture even with the lines off. Okay, so let's see what it looks like with the illustration. Okay, so I promised you guys a story, so here goes. An abbreviated version of the myth of Orion. According to the ancient legend, there once was a man named Hyrieus who was a poor farmer. Even though he was poor, he was always kind to those around him and shared what little he had. One day, he helped 3 strangers who were actually the gods Zeus, Hermes, and Poseidon traveling in disguise. In return for his kindness, he was granted one wish. Hyrieus asked for a son, and Orion was born. As Orion grew, he became a skillful hunter. However, The more famous he became, the more insensitive he became about killing animals. Instead of hunting just for food, Orion began killing animals just for fun. This got Artemis, the goddess of hunting, very upset. To teach Orion a lesson, she sent down Scorpius, a giant scorpion from Mount Olympus. The scorpion stung Orion on the foot, and he became very ill. He was about to die when Ophiuchus, the healer, gave Orion an antidote which saved his life. Orion was grateful to be saved and realized that he was wrong about killing the animals. He asked for forgiveness, and as a reward, he was placed into the stars in the sky. Just so he wouldn't forget the lesson he learned, the scorpion was also placed opposite him in the sky as a reminder of his bad deeds. All right, let's see if we can find that scorpion. First, we'll have to change the sky a little because Scorpius is best seen in the summer. So remember, this is what the sky looks like during the winter, but because we are revolving around the sun, we have to shift a little bit so we can see some different stars. If we look south, okay, so down here, just above the horizon, we can see the constellation Scorpius. Like Orion, Scorpius is a constellation whose stars actually make an image as close to what it's supposed to be. To find the scorpion, look for the bright red star. This isn't Betelgeuse, it's called Antares, and it's the heart of the scorpion. Let's see what it actually looks like. All right, so here it is without the picture, and here it is with the picture on top. Here you can see Scorpius in all his glory. Directly above him, we have Ophiuchus, the guy with the snake. He is known as the healer, and he was the one who gave Orion the antidote to save him from the scorpion's sting. Do you know about this constellation here? It's the one with the half man and the half horse. This is Sagittarius. According to legend, Sagittarius was put up in the sky to keep watch over the scorpion. If the scorpion gets out of line, Sagittarius will shoot him with his bow and arrow. Sagittarius is known as a centaur. Centaurs were mythological creatures who supposedly roamed the forest of the past. Some of you may know about centaurs from modern-day mythology. Can you think of any books or movies that have had centaurs in them? A very popular one are the Harry Potter books. It turns out that author J.K. Rowling uses many names and characters from ancient Greek mythology for the plots in her books. Would you like to see another one? If you look north, you'll see the constellation Draco, right here. Draco is a dragon and is named for one of the evil characters in the Harry Potter books, Draco Malfoy. So here's the myth of Draco the dragon. A long time ago, there was a group of people called the Chaldeans who lived in the area of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where modern-day Iraq is. These people believed that there was a monstrous dragon that brought chaos, darkness, and evil. At first, the dragon conquered all who came in his way, and it seemed that evil and darkness was always going to win over good. Finally, a brave god of light named Marduk challenged the dragon, and using all the magical powers, Marduk finally beat him. Draco the dragon was placed in the sky as a reminder to all that with enough strength and perseverance, goodness will always conquer evil. Because this was such an important lesson, Draco is one of the few constellations that never appears to set in the northern hemisphere sky. Watch. These are called northern circumpolar constellations because they all revolve around the star Polaris, which is the tail of Ursa Minor, the little bear. This just about brings us to the end of our story time. If you are interested in Greek mythology, there are plenty of great books that tell other Greek myths and legends. In addition, it's important to remember that folks in the ancient Greece weren't the only people looking up at the night sky and seeing constellations. Just about every group of people who looked at the night sky made up constellations and myths. There are constellations from China, India, Africa, and even North and South America. As you might expect, the images that these other people saw and the stories that they told were quite different from those that were told by people in ancient Greece. It is not that one group of people was right and another group was wrong. They're just different because they had different beliefs and cultures. The only reason that the Greek constellations are so well known is because those were written down in books. Many of the other cultures only told their stories, so over time the information was lost or changed. Of course, you don't have to be from ancient Greece, China, or Babylon to make up constellations. You can do it right now in the comfort of your own backyard. All you need is a dark sky, some stars, and an active imagination.